Good afternoon. Salam alaikum. This is Aromal Ajith from Bulwark Technologies, and I'm the product manager for Netwrix Auditor. So, along with me, my solution engineer from Mr. Dave Matthews from Netwrix. First of all, I just want to thank you all the you know supported partners who have the time and who initiated the time to attend this wonderful session. So as you all know that you are already having some kind of awareness and in-depth details about Netwrix Auditor. So this section will cover more in-depth detail of Netwrix Auditor and how we want to present and how we want to target your premium customers about or with Netwrix Auditor, and how we can make the successful stories with your top valued customers. So moving into the next, part of our session, the main the points which we want to cover on this session actually, initially we will give a small introduction about Bulwark and also about Netwrix and also about our partnership, and also we just want to cover what is the main criteria and what are the main use cases of Netwrix and how important as a Netwrix as a solution you want to target your valuable customers. And as a customer point of view, what are their different challenges and risks along with the visibility point of view or different kind of auditing point of view? What are the different kind of challenges and risks the customers are facing? And also, as a solution like Netwrix, how we want to onboard or how the customer want to onboard the solution and the technology. And we have a dedicated, Q&A session. So any of you have any kind of clarification, you can just go to the chat box and you can just send you the queries onto the all panelist option. So moving into the next slide. So I just want to give some kind of introduction about Bulwark and the partnership with Netwrix. So Bulwark is one of the award-winning specialized cybersecurity value-added distributor in the region. And we are started our operation in 1999, and we are celebrating our successful 20 years in cybersecurity excellence. And also, we are one of the privately held and profitable since we started. We represent 22 plus vendors and their complete product and service in our portfolio. So we are operating in GCC countries, and as well as we have an office in India. We have around 500 plus partners across this region. And we have our successful partnership with Netwrix since many years. And we have our dedicated sales, marketing, and technical team for the, especially for Netwrix. And also we have our certified technical engineers to support on the demo and pre-sales activity and post-sales activities of Netwrix from Bulwark Technologies. So from this point, I'm handovering to Dave. So Dave, you can take it.
Thanks very much, Aromal, and thank you to everyone for taking the time to join us this afternoon. So as I was introduced there, I'm one of the solutions engineers here at Netwrix. My role is to work as a technical resource. Now that may be working with our partner at Bulwark. It may be working with yourselves to assist with demonstrations, proof of concepts, or similar there, simply answering technical questions about integrations. Or I could be working with your customers as well and just assisting them through proof of concept and making sure that they get value from their time with the platform. So as we said earlier, if you have any questions around Netwrix, around our integrations, and what we might be able to do to help there, please don't hesitate to reach out to your partners at Bulwark. And of course, they can get me on board or one of my colleagues as well. I'm definitely not working on my own here. In fact, in Netwrix, we've been around now for almost 15 years. We've got our headquarters based in California, but we do have a global presence. So we've got offices in Australasia, Asia. We've got them, I'm calling you actually here from the UK. We've got them throughout Europe, and we've got multiple offices in the US as well. What this brings you is a global support team. So not only are you dealing with your localized partners, but you also have a team here and an international support team that can make sure we're able to address any issues that might arise, any concerns, especially when it comes to dealing with audit data and data security. We want to make sure that we are fast and responsive, and that our responses are effective in resolving any queries that you have there. Up to that end, Netwrix itself is one of the fastest growing US software companies. We have been for the last 7 years. Significant awards within that area, particularly around our support team and our innovation. Um, Overall, globally, we've got a customer base of well over 10,000 unique customers, and they come to us from a variety of different industries, they're different sizes, and they're coming to us with issues of various complexity as well. So very much is the case that we've probably come across it before, and we know how to deal with and answer those questions in terms of integration, scalability, and ensuring that we are helping to secure those environments. So the first question, of course, for anyone who's not completely familiar with Netwrix is, what do we do? Well, we assist companies with being able to respond to incidents and events by helping them to understand what's going on within their environments. Very much in this day and age, a typical work day for someone who's focused on IT security or data protection, they've got a number of different areas of concern that are constantly coming about. 10 years ago, you would have been focused on data security, which would have meant you have a secure perimeter, decent firewall, good antivirus on the desktops, and you can make sure you're secure. But in the last 10 years, we've seen a huge amount of involvement coming within IT. We have data growth, exponential data growth that has been continuous and doesn't look like slowing down at any stage. To deal with that, of course, we've started to move our data about. We've moved it into hybrid infrastructures, both on-premise, cloud-based data stores. This, of course, leads to challenges around ensuring we have unified security controls. Of course, spreading our data also means an increase in threats. There's a number of new attack vectors or opportunities for breaches that we have seen publicly are becoming much more frequent and are leading to a lot of companies getting a lot of visibility over their poor security practices, and that leads to a lot of damage in reputation. Of course, that also leads to a lot more visibility from the executive teams. They don't want to be caught on the receiving end of a breach, so that brings a lot more pressure onto cybersecurity personnel to ensure that we are justifying the spending that we're putting out there. And of course, to deal with all of these challenges, we have the ever-evolving compliance requirements. So making sure that we're able to adhere to new regulations that might be imposing stricter data confidentiality, and of course, privacy requirements there as they change on a day-to-day. So what about being able to mitigate that risk of a breach or data loss, or make it easier or more efficient when you're actually dealing with an incident and understanding what's taking place within your environment? At Netwrix, we do believe that you need these tools to help you continuously improve your security processes by surfacing, assessing, prioritizing, and monitoring those data security risks, and of course, ensuring that you've got effective controls in place. With continuous and accurate monitoring and really noise-free visibility, assessment and control over these risks helps you to improve and gain confidence in your security posture as well. But of course, when you start putting the right tools in place and getting the right processes, it means your team is also getting its time back. That allows you to focus and enable your organization to grow much more efficiently and be innovative in their security approach as well. Moreover, what we find is that multiple vendors might be pitching their approach to security, whether it's identity, infrastructure, data. They might be saying that that's at the heart of everything. But really at Netwrix, what we say is take a step back and find a balanced approach to bridge those security pillars themselves, with data being the first among equals. So at Netwrix, we approach this using these 5 processes. Now, anyone who's familiar with the NIST cybersecurity framework will be familiar with these steps. The challenge is really in the first instance, is identifying your data. So understanding what type of data you have, where is it located, who's got access to it, and then this allows you to attach a value to that data. You know, what is the risk associated with certain data objects? The risks for it being lost or being breached and shared externally. You know, what is the potential cost associated with that data to give you a value to associate there? Once you know the value of your data, you can then start to take steps to protect that. So understanding who has access to it and what are they able to do with that data as well. And then you can take steps to ensure you're following best practice, perhaps applying the least privilege access model and monitoring for those security access controls as well. Once you've taken that step and you've assessed your current security posture, you can then move into the last 3 steps, which is around remediation. So looking at activity, understanding that where you might have potentially overexposed access, or you might have misconfigured settings there, or even simply you've inherited legacy data from the previous IT provider. You want to make sure that you're taking appropriate steps to protect that data. Once you've established a baseline and you understand what's happening, you can then start to highlight unusual activities, abnormal behaviors, and you can then take responsive actions to any data breaches that you might have. Anyone who triggers off an alert once they've started working outside of that baseline, you can then make informed decisions to respond. And that might be a response as simply an alert. It might be a proactive response to actually change access controls, protect the data, or it could be a response as in we're going to simply migrate or quarantine certain events and activities so that we can come and review them without the pressure of a continued breach being taken right underneath our noses. And finally, if you do find yourself on the receiving end of an incident, a security incident, knowing who was affected, what was changed, and of course knowing how did this occur in the first place so that you can take steps to close up any of those gaps. Because Netwrix is continuously monitoring events across your entire IT estate, you have much better information to know exactly what was going on there and what's occurred. Over the last 10 years, we've taken a lot of steps to advance and improve Netwrix Auditor. Starting off back in around 2012, at that point we had standalone auditing tools, which were looking at separate parts of your environment, be it privileged user access, file activity, database activity, and so on. From that point up until 2020, we've taken big steps in terms of improving the platform, bringing everything together into a single pane of glass, giving you much more security focused reporting and dashboards, not just simply being a collector of events, but actually telling you here's areas of risks and concerns, here are steps that might need to be taken to mitigate or reduce risk that you are exposed to there. And then over the last 3 years, there's been a very big focus around security of your data itself. So classifying the data, understanding the role of the users who have access to that data, and being able to respond to activities and actions. Mostly in the last, more recently in 2019, 2020, we've added more effective visibility around permissions. So whether we're talking Office 365, whether we're talking SQL Server, VMware, these are 2 additions that are coming in the next version of Netwrix due in a few weeks. We've included integrations into CyberArk and other PAM solutions as well to give you access and visibility to these privileged access users. We've also added in for our data classification additional data sources. So we can now look at SharePoint, we can look at Oracle and SQL databases. We can also classify data in OneDrive, Microsoft Teams, G Drive, Box, and Dropbox, which has also led to a big uptake for a lot of our existing customers. And lastly, just a sneak peek of what's just around the corner. Netwrix has been working for quite some time to develop an AI-driven risk assessment dashboard, and that's currently in testing with some of our customers. So you will be seeing a lot more about that in the near future. So Netwrix itself, when you have a look at Netwrix, the Netwrix auditor platform, you've got a number of different modules available out of the box to you. So we started with the Microsoft stack, which gave us Windows servers, Active Directory, Exchange, SharePoint, and SQL Server. But then we expanded from the on-premise to the cloud as Microsoft moved into Office 365 and Azure AD. This meant that we also included Exchange and SharePoint Online. SharePoint Online these days gives you access and visibility to activity in OneDrive, and as I mentioned, Microsoft Teams, which will see them big uptake on in this post-COVID world as well. We've also included additions of non-Microsoft based file storage, whether you're using Nutanix, hyperconvergent infrastructure, NetApp, or EMC. And we can also look at events taking place on your infrastructure within VMware, Hyper-V. We can tell you around changes to configurations, resources, and usage there, and also give you information around activity that's taking place on the host. Just as an example, if we're monitoring for activity in a file server, we better be watching the data stores as well on the VMware host, because of course incidents and access can occur on the back end as well as what's the customer facing front end. And lastly, we've recently added additions to our network devices. So previously we were looking just at Cisco, Palo Alto, Juniper, and SonicWall. We've now added in FortiGate, Aruba, and Cisco Meraki. We can now talk to the dashboards there to pull in all the information from their online service as well. On the data classification side, of course, we look at your structured and unstructured data. So we can be pulling data classification information from data stored within Oracle and SQL databases. We can look at data on the file servers. We can look at data in mailboxes, as well as SharePoint, OneDrive, and Microsoft Teams. And then in addition, as I mentioned, we've got a number of different cloud-based solutions that we can also pull data from. And we don't stop there. We do have additional integrations available. Many of these are custom driven, depending on the customer's requirement. So if you do have a particular or unique requirement, do come and have a talk to us. We've got a very active development team that might be able to assist you there. And this is really what Netwrix does, is we don't just stop at what we support out of the box. We do integrate with other solutions, and some of these solutions may be those that you're already selling to your customers. So to that end, you can sell Netwrix as part of a wider solution. In fact, this is where I came to Netwrix from. I used to work with a reseller, with a partner, when Netwrix was part of a bigger package of data security platforms. And I really liked what Netwrix was able to do, particularly around the integrations, which was the reason I reached out to the guys, and the rest is history. With the integrations though, this means that Netwrix is able to pull data in from these third-party platforms. You can then have all of that information reported in a single pane of glass. And it also means you can make use of Netwrix's custom reports, alerts, and our long-term archive. As an example, for many of our customers who might be using Amazon Web Services, they use the Cloud Audit reporting tool there. Now, Cloud Audit is very good and very effective at what it does, but for anyone who needs to respond or needs to investigate around configuration changes, it's quite a thought-out process in terms of being able to set that up. If you pull that data into Netwrix, it means you can very quickly build your own custom queries using filters based on the existing data you already have. And then what you can also do is you can save those custom reports, use them to create alerts, set your thresholds for the triggers for those alerts as well. AWS also has a limitation built in that it only retains that activity log for 90 days. So if you do identify that an incident occurred, but you're out of that 90-day retention cycle, Netwrix will have that data retained in the long-term archive, which means you've got the ability to review that for up to 10 years or even longer if you wanted to extend that retention. Netwrix doesn't just pull data in and report on it as well. We can also push data back out to third parties. So if you've got customers using an ITSM like ServiceNow, maybe they're using a SIEM dashboard, then Netwrix can push and filter alerts out so that those specialist security personnel, they aren't dealing with routine maintenance queries and activities, but rather they have Netwrix highlighting high priority incidents that they need to respond to or that need their attention. In addition, the data classification tool can also write into Microsoft Information Protection Framework templates. So if you're using Azure Information Protection or Office 365 classification labels, the Netwrix can both read and write into those templates, or we can even write metadata into file properties themselves. So if you've got customers that are using a DLP solution, you can actually tag a file to say this file contains confidential information, and that means if one of their end users tries to attach that file to an email, the DLP solution is going to pick up that this is a confidential email and it's going to force the appropriate access controls around that. So why are customers picking up Netwrix over our competitors in the market space? I'm going to break protocol here, and I'm going to mention a couple of names. First off, talking about return on investment, faster ROI. We see a lot of Readiness out there in the marketplace, and there's a reason we see them, because they're very good at what they do. They have a very effective auditing tool and a very good classification framework tool. But for a lot of our customers who have come to us from Readiness, what they've found is the return on investment, it's very long. It's a very expensive tool. There's also a very expensive and drawn out implementation process, and there's a lot of payments required for professional services. All of that isn't required for Netwrix. In fact, our agentless deployment means that you can deploy Netwrix in an hour and you're going to have data by lunchtime. It's very quick and effective to get that set up, and you can see the value of the investment. And then if I go to the other end of the spectrum with the other competitors we see, the likes of Leapede or Manage Engine, these competitors we see a lot of because they're cheap. And there's a reason that they have a very low price point of entry. That's because they don't necessarily have the precision or the accuracy within the data that they're collecting. Or maybe they don't have the long-term archive management that Netwrix offers. Or even in some cases, they don't have the security-focused risk assessments and dashboards that you get with Netwrix. They might be just simply collecting events and presenting those. So I've had a number of customers come to me from other competitors, and they've been saying, we've had incidents that occurred, and it was only after the fact that we discovered we weren't getting full visibility of what was going on. So with Netwrix, we can cover both ends of the spectrum, giving you that faster return on your investment, giving you higher precision and accuracy. And of course, with Netwrix, there are very few other competitors out there that have such a broad coverage of both structured, unstructured, on-premise, and cloud-based data sources that they can collect data from. With our integrations, it means that customers don't have to rip out existing implementations and data platforms, but rather Netwrix can very often talk to those. If they have a RESTful API, then Netwrix can pull that data in into our own audit database, so you can use our platform to create those custom reports, alerts, and notifications. And Netwrix itself, we've been in the game for 15 years now. We are a trusted advisor, and working with our partners, we are very much channel-led in terms of our sales. So we're not going to knock you out of a deal, but rather we're going to work very closely to ensure success and give you access to the resources that you need to ensure that you do get success. And that's what we get across the board with our customers. There are very many success cases that we have. Our customers are very happy to talk about this. Presenting you here a few of the opportunities I've had the chance to work with, and you can see that customers turn around and they can immediately see the value and the impact that Netwrix has had on their own lives. So I just wanted to take you briefly through, what does customer success look like to us? How do we see this and how do we approach it? The first part is understanding the journey that the customer is taking. There's basically 3 steps to that. There's the discovery. So they might have identified that they have a requirement, whether that's through a previous incident, whether that's through compliance changes, the result of an audit or something similar. So during the discovery phase, that's where the customer's often reaching out to you as a trusted advisor and asking for your recommendations, your input. You can then bring Netwrix into play, and this is where we can actually have a conversation with the customer. We can provide a demonstration of the platform and help them to technically qualify Netwrix within their environment, and of course understand how this might meet their requirements. And lastly, they go into the business approval. So they will have the budget allocated, they will have a deployment program, and of course, through yourself, we'll be able to provide information around sizing requirements, costings, and also if they want to use a jumpstart program, perhaps get a helping hand from Netwrix personnel to get things up and running, we can set that up too. That approach from Netwrix perspective should take no more than 4 weeks. And basically we have multiple steps here. So on the first week, this is usually during the initial contact, discussion, investigations. The second week is where we actually would assist a customer with a proof of concept, or as we call it at Netwrix, a proof of value. By the third week, Netwrix will have been deployed. We now have data coming out of Netwrix. Maybe we've set up some integrations so they can start to review the data and the outputs from Netwrix. And finally, they can see that we're answering those initial requirements set off in week 1. So we're able to then move forward with a plan for full implementation. Just a bit more detail in terms of what each of those stages look like. When we first engage with the customer, we have a customer conversation, a demonstration, and then we go ahead and we start planning for a proof of value. So we will actually have a call with them to define their success, actually set out a scope of works. Here's the data sources that we're going to be looking at. Here's the type of outputs that we're going to be expecting. And what we also want to ensure is that we've got the key stakeholders involved in this process. This can very often be non-technical personnel as well as technical personnel getting involved here. So we can make sure that we understand their requirements and are planning how this deployment is going to affect them and their role, and the outputs are going to meet those requirements there. We also have an infrastructure readiness call. This is with the technical personnel, and this is where we actually make sure that we've got the infrastructure in place to deploy Netwrix. Now we make this a lot easier because we have virtual appliances available, so customers can either download a VMware or a Hyper-V image that's pre-configured, and all it needs to do is be connected to their domain or their data sources. Or if the customer wants, they can spin this up in Azure or AWS. We do have marketplace images available there. So we get things very easy to get up and running very quickly. Also, if the customer wants to be very hands-on, they want to actually deploy everything themselves, then we can assist with that process as well. We've got plenty of documentation available online. Once we've got things, we've got the sort of scope of work set out, we've got a document agreeing here's what we're going to be doing, then we can go ahead and basically work through that deployment. So we assist with the deployment of Netwrix, we assist with connecting to the data sources. If we're talking about data classification, then we'll set up various taxonomies, we'll set up the workflows to start collecting that data and making sure that they're happy with the data that's coming in. And also we quickly review the data that's going out, make sure that we're not getting any sort of incorrect reportings or we've got any errors due to misconfigured systems and similar there. That's usually the end of week 2. Come to week 3, we're now reviewing those outputs. So now the customer's seen the value of the data. And I might be talking to a customer who's very interested in data discovery and classification. So we can start with that. We can start reviewing the data and what's coming out. But because of the way Netwrix works, we can also show some additional insights. We can use the risk assessments. We can use the executive overview to show them spikes in activity. Could we have misconfigured service accounts perhaps that are having multiple failed logins? We can use behavior anomalies dashboards to highlight areas of concern. Netwrix is automatically pulling this data in once we've connected to the data sources, so customers immediately can see value beyond the initial scope of what they were looking to integrate there as well. And finally, we have the final data review with the customer. Now, we know some of our competitors, they come in with the likes of a data risk assessment process. And that's a long process that might take a month or 2 or 3 if you're lucky. And very much it's pre-configured with templates that tell the customer exactly what they wanted to hear. With Netwrix, we don't do that. We simply use the data that the customer has within their environment to show value for the product. It's a good chance for the customer to understand how the product operates and to actually get some hands-on with using the data themselves, investigating incidents, using their own tools so that they can understand this is where Netwrix is going to free up their time and make their life easier. And of course, during these wrap-up calls, we also make sure that we've got those stakeholders back in the room so that they can see the outputs and see how we're addressing those concerns that they raised way back in week 1. Now we have a number of different resources that are available to download directly from our website. Of course, this slide deck will be shared with all attendees, so you'll be able to grab these yourselves. But these include checklist and prerequisites. These include guides to configuring the infrastructure, making sure you have the appropriate service accounts set up, and then of course, being able to deploy successfully. We've also got a Visibility Academy, which has a number of webinars and sessions and use cases around specific requirements. So you can also review that. Maybe your customer has mentioned a specific requirement around data access governance or similar there. So we've got resources available to help you go back and address those customer requirements on top of this. And of course, all in all, you also have the resource through your partners at Bulwark. And Bulwark also have access to resources such as myself and my other solutions engineers, so that we can give you technical assistance and guidance throughout the process and make sure that we're all experiencing success. So with that said, I'm going to wrap up here and just wanted to ask if there were any questions. As a reminder, you can drop them into the chat. Just make sure that you're sending them to host and presenters so we can all see them there. I can see one question that did come through earlier, which was just asking about competitors. So I did mention several there. Readiness, who is a big competitor in this space. They've been doing this for quite a while. As I said, quite an expensive platform, quite an expensive implementation, a lot of overhead there. But we can talk around different features and functionality in their platform with what we can do. At the other end, we see a lot of Manage Engine. Manage Engine, we see a lot of because it's a lot cheaper, but with that comes some challenges around focus, some challenges around support side of things. Very often I have customers who might be existing Manage Engine customers coming to me because they've had incidents that occurred and they weren't able to get access to the information they required, and now it's too late to be able to recover. I would say the other two competitors I see in this workspace would be Lapide. Lapide is very similar to Netwrix, mainly because they started with a couple of ex-Netwrix employees. They're still a very new product that they're working with, and they're still trying to establish themselves with some footing in the market space. So you might see them very competitive on pricing, but really you want to make sure that you position yourself as a trusted advisor. So you should be sticking to products that are a bit more mature and definitely have the backing are going to be around for the long run. Next question I have is, how do we differentiate ourselves from ITM solutions? So I guess that's a very good question. Really, for an ITM solution, often, well, let's talk about like the likes of a SIEM. So a SIEM solution that will collect data. They are designed to cast the net wide, and then the requirement is on the user to filter out data to better understand what's taking place within their environment. At Netwrix, we don't just cast the net out and collect all information from across all these boards unfiltered. Rather, Netwrix actually has a lot of predefined filters so that we're already pre-filtering a lot of the information that comes in with a data security focus. The outputs, the Netwrix reports that we do have available are much more focused around access controls, permissions, security inventory, around particular types of activities and behaviors, whether it's privilege elevation or even temporary users within your network. So a lot of what we have is already predefined, and that's where we come and we can offer a lot more or a lot faster return on investment. I would also say, and it's not to our detriment, but Netwrix doesn't require as much technical knowledge to get deployed. It's actually very easy and straightforward to understand exactly what's going on when you deploy Netwrix. There's not a lot of specialization required just to get the platform up and running. I have a number of customers who actually use us alongside other solutions where they might need to quickly respond to an incident or understand activities and behaviors that happened within their network. So they use the Netwrix search tools to create their own custom queries to understand what happened there, and then they might use an ITM or another solution to dive a wee bit deeper into the background of activity there to give them the insights that are specialized in the platform that they might be using as well. So I've got a question here around Netwrix is about auditing and reporting. Do we also help with security assessments? So yes, we've got a number of different reports and dashboards that are particularly focused around risk assessments and security gap analysis. We also have grouped together reports for compliance requirements. So if you've got a customer who is looking at SOX requirements, or maybe they process payment information, so they need to look at PCI requirements, what we've done is we've grouped together the 50 or 100 reports that could be required to help with those regulatory compliance requirements. But rather than just having them run each report in turn, we actually got mapping documents that will tell you, here's what reports you need to run based on the different data sources that you might have within your environment. So for some customers, they'll have certain types of databases. There'll be reports unique to them to run. Other customers might not. They might just simply be looking at auditing and tracking activities within their unstructured data. So there'll be a separate set of reports, and these mapping documents help to get a better understanding and prove compliance within those areas. I will also say that because Netwrix has this data long term, it's not just about reporting about the last 6 months, but rather we keep that data for longer. So if there is an incident or something occurs, or maybe they get an audit, a historical or legacy audit, then they also have that data visible and available within Netwrix, so they can prove compliance at any given point in time from the time that Netwrix was put in. I've got a question just asking, what's the core objective of Netwrix? So very much for the solution itself, I would say Netwrix started as visibility platform. So we were very much about getting information much faster and cleaner than what you could do with native event logs. That was where we first started in 2006. We've progressed from there. We're still very much about reporting and auditing and visibility over what's taking place within your environment, but there's a much stronger focus around data security now as well. So giving you that information around, here's potential risks, here's information around compliance, and here's information to help you classify and value your data within your environment there as well. We've got a question here around custom compliance settings and running against configuration of network and security appliances, also against the server. So yeah, you can. So if you want to create your own custom compliance reports, you can do so. You might have a group of reports together. You can group those reports. With Netwrix, you can actually create your own custom queries. So I had a customer recently who said to me, Dave, I just simply want a report that tells me all privilege activity across every environment that I'm auditing. So this included Exchange, SharePoint, file servers, Active Directory, Azure, and similar. What we actually did was we sat down with them and we looked at all of the actions that we were auditing because we already had that audit data, and we started filtering. saying, well, if a user can make a configuration change to a server, that must be privileged activity. If they can make any changes in AD, that must be privileged activity. What we did was we built these filters in, so we filtered out all of the day-to-day routine maintenance work, and at the end of that, we had a custom report that was significant to their particular requirement. It was to monitor a third party that was managing their environment. And once they had that report, they were able to save that. They also subscribed to that report. So what they did was they were getting a weekly summary of all activity initiated by this third party within their environment. And so they were able to stay on top of that. Probably one more question I've got here is just asking, if a customer has a SIEM, what value does Netwrix offer? So just more of what I mentioned earlier was Netwrix has information there. We might be able to pull data from data sources that the SIEM hasn't been able to pull the data from. We can also pull in data and using a lot of the predefined reports and notifications, you can also get a bit more visibility over, okay, here's areas where you might want to take a bit more of a focus on activities that are taking place in those areas. And then of course you can build your SIEM, your SIEM templates and your reports around those areas. And of course, you can use Netwrix to pre-filter a lot of information as well. Netwrix can collect data from the same data source as SIEM, but we can take out a lot of activities, and perhaps you want to set up alerting thresholds. You want to set up, we don't want to know about all configuration changes within a certain part of the environment, but we do definitely want to know if they take place and they're initiated from a certain location. Maybe they take place, certain times a day, or by members of certain security groups or people who are not members of particular security groups. You can build one of those reports in a couple of minutes, and then of course you can push that information or push that data out so it can be collected by the SIEM solution and reported on there separately in their own dashboards. Lastly, I've got a question around comparisons with competitive solutions. So we don't have any charts or any documentation available directly with our competitors. The only reason we don't have those is because it's always subject to change. We might say, in fact, we see it with a lot of our competitors who have published charts against us. They might say our solution can't do a particular feature or function, and we find, well, that's incorrect. And we're able to respond to that and sort of preload our response to that as well. However, if you do have a particular competitor, maybe they are a competitor of ours that you already sell, then I don't mind having a conversation with you, or even through Bulwark. We can definitely set up a call and have a conversation around that. At Netwrix, we do have internal documentation that helps us to highlight. We have regular calls internally around different competitive solutions and responses and feedback that we've got from customers as well around where the competitor might be. They might have the advantage themselves through features, or it might be that Netwrix has the advantage because we do something that they don't. So if you've got particular cases or particular competitive platforms that you'd like to talk more about, definitely reach out to Aromal or any of the team at Bulwark, and we can set up a call and have that conversation directly with you. So you can take some notes and create your own battle cards there as well. So with that, I think we've answered all the questions. I want to say thank you to everyone for joining this, and thank you for your interaction. That's been a great Q&A session, and really appreciate all the feedback that I've seen coming through there. As ever, we're always here to. Hiya, Aromal.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Thank you for your time. It was an in-depth and a detailed presentation about Netwrix Auditor. And first of all, and finally, I just thank you all the participants who attended this wonderful session. And if you have any, need any clarification and further details about this product, you can have my contact address in this particular slide. You can just shoot your queries in the emails or in the mobile numbers and the WhatsApp message, anything, I will be there for you. So thank you, and thank you for